Ladies and gentlemen, we have all heard of the best selling book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. But if our next CEO speaker were to ever write a book, he would most likely title it Homeopathy and the Art of Motorcycle Manufacturing. We would urge the audience to probe him more on this, because his current priority is to apply the scientific principles of homeopathy to build a brand centered strategy and achieve his vision of being one of the world's leading motorcycle manufacturers. Beyond this, his master's in engineering from Warwick University needs no introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the pulsar, the boxer, and the aggressive discoverer of India's motorcycle business, Managing Director of Bajaj Auto, Mr. Rajiv Bajaj.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, you can see from the title, this has nothing to do with your usual kind of presentation, I guess. Anyway, many thanks to all of you for having Bajaj Auto and me here today. Special thanks to Ramdev ji and Rajat. They came to Pune to extend a special invitation. Thank you for that. I'm in the middle of a bad viral, as you can tell, so if my speech is a little confused, it's not my fault. But if my thoughts are confused, then it is my fault. My presentation has no numbers for two reasons. One, because you know the numbers, or at least you are supposed to know the numbers. And second, because I really don't know the numbers as well as you do. When I asked myself what a central theme for this short discussion could be, my mind went back to a book that some of you may be familiar with. It's a book called No Logo. I didn't read it because I didn't agree with the title, but apparently it was a book that denounced logos or brands as means for exploiting the marketplace or the consumer. However, my own view is that it is not the logo that exploits the consumer. It is people who exploit people. And the fundamental reason for this is because most people in management, and that was our experience, and that's what I want to share with all of you today, most people in management fail to be able to draw a line that is able to define where legitimate growth must stop and where greed begins. So the inability to distinguish growth from greed, in my view, is the single biggest reason for most corporate problems around the world. So that's the focus of my presentation, that we must keep our ego quelled and have a brand-centered strategy with which we manage our companies. Next one, Kevin. Let me start with the Harvard Business Review of 2011. It seems to say that somewhere between 3 and 25% of products that are launched succeed, depending on how you measure success, whether by the scale of the sales or profitability. The Harvard Business Review from the Harvard Business School, as you know, these business schools are not only very good at stating the problem, they are often equally inept at providing a solution. And in my view, it is because most of the problems are caused by people that come out of these business schools in the first place. So let's move on to someone who can provide more insight and possibly a solution. In my view, two of the greatest marketing strategists in the world today are Al Ries and Jack Trout. And Jack Trout consults with us. He has been doing so for the last couple of years. Al Ries, in the book The Origin of Brands, said something to this effect, that across the world, across categories, across industries, and I'm speaking really of consumer products, whether they be FMCG or durables or automotive or whatever, something like 90-95% of all new products fail. And this was an information, or this was data that really made us reflect very deeply on how we go about what we do, because as an automotive company, we believe that we are a bunch of very well-educated people. We are very aware of what works and what doesn't work. We have lots of investment in our R&Ds, and we pursue zero defect. We market research everything to death. We are awarded by all kinds of people, from JD Power to what have you. And yet, when finally our product goes to the marketplace, in terms of generating reasonable sales, sustainable sales, and most importantly, of course, profitable sales, we succeed only 5% of the time. Now, just to put it into perspective, if, God forbid, we had to go to a cardiac surgeon who succeeded only 5% of the time, I think we'd have a serious problem with that. But somehow managements seem to get away with a failure rate of 90–95%. I can't speak for other industries, but I can tell you, if you were to reflect after this session and try to write down the names of two-wheelers, three-wheelers, cars introduced in this market in the last 10 years, you would find that this statistic is like a empirical truth. 90–95% of everything that's been introduced has failed. 90–95% of what we introduced till recently also failed. Fortunately, Alries provides a solution also in terms of how one can hope to do better. In his words, we need to have a better way to predict the future. Next one, Kevin. He says the fundamental reason for the failure of products or any initiative, in the end, we can only do two things: new products and new markets, or a combination of the two, is because most of the time, the mentality with which we approach the market is to take away a slice of the market, rather than to try and create a market for ourselves, because nobody wants to really start small and nurture a niche. Everybody wants a fairly large slice out of somebody else's pie. That's where the whole issue of the ego comes in. So the marketing sin number one, I would say, is like we've been told in a different context. You must not covet what your neighbor has. But we are all coveting what somebody else has. Somebody wants to make somebody's 100cc motorcycle. Somebody wants to make somebody's sports motorcycle. Somebody wants to take away from somebody's small car. Somebody wants to take away from somebody's big car. So on and so forth. And most people create products thinking that they are creating brands only so as to take away from someone else. In other words, the brands are created to serve an existing category rather than to create a new category. In fact, every time a new product is launched into our sector, the way we look at it as a company to try and assess whether this product will be a competitive threat or not is not to judge the product itself in terms of how it looks, what its specifications are, what technology might be slightly different, where it might be priced. We've come to realize, after failing 90% of the time, that these things are secondary. What is most important is to first try and judge whether this product looks like it's creating a new category or it's chasing somebody else's category. If it looks like it's chasing somebody else's category, we just dismiss it from our minds, because we have never seen success, whether of our product or that of someone else's, which has been chasing somebody else's pie. So this is what Mr. Rees says, that you must not covet your neighbor's market share, for example. And of course, the marketing sin number two is to then try and grab some market share, making the classical mistake of the line extension. So these two sins are responsible for the 90–95% failure rate of the industry in my view. Let me try to give you a simplistic but practical example of this. Next one, please. In my view, this was Bajaj at its best. Somebody should tell my father I said so, he'll be very happy. He thinks I have something against scooters. I think there were probably many reasons why Bajaj did very well when Bajaj was like this, which was the 60s and 70s and 80s. But in my view, there was one fundamental reason. Bajaj was focused on creating and growing a category. We called it the value for money category, and that's why at that time the tagline of the company was value for money for years. So whether it was the little scooter, the bigger scooter, or even the three-wheeler, they all appealed to and were rooted in the same category. And this oneness, if I may say so, this oneness, this one family feeling is manifested both at the front end and at the back end. At the front end, in terms of the brand, you could easily bless all of them with the same name Bajaj because they all look the same. So, one may be a little bigger than the other, one may have 3 wheels instead of 2, but they all look like they came from the same zoo. On the other hand, if you look at even the back end, in terms of the development skills, the cost structure, the quality levels required to make any one of them, I think you would feel that the same would apply uniformly to all of them. So this perfect harmony or oneness between the front end and the back end and everything standing for one thing, which was the value for money category, was why Bajaj was so successful, primarily, in my view, at least from a strategic point of view. This was until the end of the 80s. Now, if we move on to what happened over the 90s, and we went from being a market leader by far in as early as 1990 to a situation in 99-2000, in that financial year, when our two-wheeler business lost money. So from market leadership to a loss-making business, it just took 10 years for the ground to fall right out from beneath our feet. How do we explain this? Next one, Kevin. Well, if we were to look at it in terms of the product mindset again, in terms of products that look attractive, sexy-looking products, more technology, even a foreign brand association such as Kawasaki. So if we were to look at these measures, then the products we had here were at least as good. And in fact, I would argue as products, they were better than what we saw on the previous slide. But unfortunately, the business result was worse. And my understanding is because the oneness was lost. It is very difficult to imagine that all these products belong to the same family, that they came from the same genes, that they speak the same language, that they were made of the same line, and they carry the same values and represent the same category. Because we were trying to take share away from everybody else. The Sunny was made to take something from the moped or the little scooties, the M80 from the Indian motorcycle segment, as it was called at that time, the Kawasaki Bajaj motorcycles. This is only one of them. There were many others to try and compete with Hero and Yamaha. And of course, we made the more sophisticated scooters to compete with LML and Kinetic. So as we sought to grow in a somewhat greedy sense, and the discontinuity that it caused in the business, in my view, was the primary reason for all the problems that then followed over the next 10 years. And what we forgot somewhere, I think, along the way was that Bajaj as a name, and that's where I think there is still perhaps some doubts or some questions about, what do we mean by our brand strategy, and is Bajaj our brand or not? I think most people believe that names like Bajaj, or if I may say so just for clarity, names like Tata or Mahindra and other such very well-known and respected corporate names, or mother brands as they are called, uh, there is a notion that these names are the cause of success. But what we found by our own experience is that these names are not the cause of success. These names are actually the result of success. The cause of success is a strategy to create a category, to be true to it, and to grow the category. And when that strategy becomes successful, the name that is associated with that category, in this name, the name Bajaj, in this case, the name Bajaj becomes popular, let's say. And then one seeks to take that name out of that category and make all these extraneous products under that name, hoping that something will rub off, and nothing rubs off. So that is what we found, that of course the name Bajaj is very valuable, but only as long as it is associated with that which made it valuable in the first place. And it is impossible to transfer equity across categories in this way. Next one. So if we were to just observe what had happened and what we could conclude from it, we came to the conclusion that we don't really sell products. What we really do is to create and market positions in the mind of the customer. And if we don't have a position, or if we have just a Me Too position, which is what happens when you chase somebody else's market share, then one way or the other, directly or indirectly, we all end up competing on price. In fact, this is something that my colleagues and I discussed in great detail about 3 years ago, because we sat down and asked ourselves, on what basis could we hope to survive in the coming future? Because when we looked at our competition, like Honda and Yamaha and Suzuki, we could see that they were ahead of us on every tangible parameter. In terms of scale, much larger. In terms of technology, certainly ahead. In terms of quality, we could hope to be at best equal. In terms of cost, because of their presence in India and China, etc., they were as cost competitive. In terms of distribution, especially if we are talking about global distribution, it would be a long time before we could even hope to catch up. So what was the lever really that we had in the business to hope that we had a fair chance of being a worthy competitor in the future? So the only lever that was available to us was actually the lever of the brand, as nebulous and as amorphous as it sounded at that time. But that was the only tangible lever available. And we could press upon that lever if we were brave enough to reposition ourselves. Now, what we mean by repositioning, I'd like to share with you on the next slide. Simplistically, if you look at the vertical black columns, just to explain, the 3 columns say Japan. For a moment, let's assume that's Honda, Yamaha, and Suzuki. And then there's some 200 competitors out of China, so I can't put 200 columns there, so I just put one saying China. So this is our global competition. The Japanese that we compete with head-on, and the Chinese that compete more on a cost or a price basis. And I would say that these companies, in terms of the brand structure, are vertically organized. From the smallest moped to the biggest car that is made by, say, any of these Japanese competitors of ours, would all carry the same brand. Now, it's a matter of opinion whether they are making the same mistake that we've all made for a long time, which is to stretch one name across so many categories that it doesn't stand for anything anymore. So we said to ourselves that if we have to reposition ourselves, repositioning cannot be just at a simple level of just the product or some variant or some new market. We have to reposition at the highest possible level. As Einstein said, a problem is never solved at the level at which it is created. So you have to find the next level to potentize the argument to the next level and differentiate yourself at that level. So we said we would differentiate ourselves or reposition ourselves at the level of the business model itself. So we thought to ourselves that instead of competing on a vertical model, we'll compete on a horizontal model, primarily based on price points and certain functionalities or certain consumer benefits that this brand would provide consumers with. So RE became our three-wheeler brand or our commercial vehicle brand, and the Boxer, Discover, and the Pulsar are motorcycle brands. Next one, Kevin. I'd say since we did this 3 years back, we've had some success. Today we have a situation where if someone were to say, what's a Pulsar? It's very simple. It's a sports motorcycle. What's a Discover? It's a deluxe motorcycle. What's a Boxer? It's a utility motorcycle. What's a RE? It's a three-wheeler. If it was all Bajaj, it'd be very hard to explain that Bajaj is a sporty, deluxe, utility brand that also makes three-wheelers. I mean, it makes no sense to anyone. So what we have done, I think, conceptually is to restore the oneness that was there when we were doing just one thing well. But since we are doing more than one thing, and this is the challenge most companies face, we are all very successful when we do one thing well. It's when we start doing multiple things that things go wrong. And that's where one needs to reposition oneself. So that's what we've done. And just wait, Kev. And in our view, this has brought us, in the last 3 years, from about a little over 2 million vehicles to about 4.5 million vehicles this year, we hope, in terms of sales. You are aware of how rewarding it has been financially, this strategy, so I won't dwell on that. And we feel quite confident that given the state of growth of this market and the way we see ourselves growing in our overseas markets, in our international markets, aided also by KTM, our kind of acquisition out of Europe, we feel there is no reason why, just as we have grown by double in the last 3 years, we cannot grow by something like double in the next 3 years again. So we think our strategy is good enough to just repeat the whole thing all over again. Next one, Kevin. So if I were to quickly run through a few lessons we learned in the process of doing this, the main lesson, at least I learned in my 20 years at Bajaj, when I joined the company out of University of Warwick, as the lady mentioned, I was trained to think about just-in-time, because just-in-time was supposed to be the one solution for all problems at that time. And then somebody said, no, just-in-time is not enough. And there were so many solutions that I need to read this to tell you about it. Then they said, no, there must be Kaizen, there must be world-class manufacturing, Toyota production system, Kawasaki production system, automation and robotics, but you must also know CAD, CAM, simultaneous engineering, re-engineering, Six Sigma, TQM. You must wear 6 hats, have 7 habits, look for blue oceans, be a bit of a maverick, and indulge in management by walking around. I mean, at the end of all that crap for 20 years, every time I learned something, I found myself back at the starting point. Because there was always a new book on the shelf, and there was always a new consultant on the seminar circuit. And these guys would do anything to keep themselves in demand and keep all of us confused. So I decided that I was going to ignore all this. I heeded the advice of a great homeopath come yogi called Dr. Little, who lives quietly in his hut in the Himalayas, who told me, don't look at all these possibilities. Just look at a principle. And he said, all questions will be answered if you can answer the question, who am I? And that is the purpose of a brand or a logo. It should say very clearly, who am I? It should be self-evident. If you need a whole paragraph to say, who am I, there is a big problem. So the 5 principles that I've tried to work with are these. First, that of Darwin. These are the real masters. These are not the guys on the seminar circuit. I won't read it, but I'll just tell you my interpretation of it. The one word I don't like at all is the word change, because this word is thrown at us to develop a fear psychosis in us so that we will do something different and make a mistake. The word I like more is evolution, because everything evolves. There's no point telling Tendulkar, cricket will change. I mean, what's the guy supposed to do? But if you tell him Test cricket will become one day will become T20, he can understand the evolution and he can respond to it. Otherwise, he doesn't know whether he must play the flute or learn how to play chess or what is he supposed to do. You know? So the first thing to believe in is that markets will evolve. And put very simply, it means only two things. Where products are concerned, segments will sub-segment. Where markets are concerned, you have to go from the market you dominate to other similar markets. That's all it means. That's all evolution means. Just look for opportunities to sub-segment, to create your own category, and keep expanding into markets that are like yours, because if you're going with the same brand that has been successful and that dominates a certain market, there's every chance that you will succeed when you go to other similar markets that are also looking for those kind of benefits that the brand offers. So the first principle is evolution, not change. The second principle, the second word I don't like at all, like change, is innovation. Because in this country, every day there is an innovation conference. And they are always saying innovate, 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 innovate. And nobody knows what to do after coming back to the company, what is to be done in terms of innovation. But if we accept the theory of evolution, then rather than innovation, we have found it very useful to work with the concept of adaptation. Because adaptation only means you must specialize. We must all specialize, whatever businesses we run. So it's like a cat. A cat evolves, and then if there's a cat that's in the Himalayas, then it becomes a snow leopard because it adapts to the local conditions there. So one must adapt. And adaptation means specialization, and the difficult part is that specialization means sacrifice. And companies don't like making sacrifices. So the reason we made a sacrifice, when we said we will not make scooterettes and mopeds and scooters and cheap motorcycles, and when we made sacrifices at the back end of the business, when we shut down the plants, we shut down in the 90s and in the early part of the last decade. When we let go the people we let go, I was asking Kevin, just as we were sitting there, how much do you think we spent on letting people go and changing our skill sets? He said probably over 1,000 crores of rupees. That's the kind of sacrifice that's got to be made, both at the front and at the back end, if you want to adapt your business and specialize it to whatever new position you're trying to acquire in the marketplace. Next one, please, Kevin. Third, I think if this is true for the creation of the universe, it's true for the creation of any product category. There is a false notion about this mother brand business, and we were all taught in school that familiarity breeds contempt. Of course, then we got married and it was reinforced that familiarity breeds contempt. What breeds desire is only novelty. But the way companies will line extend mother brands, you would think that familiarity breeds desire. It never happens like that. The human desire is always kindled by curiosity, not by familiarity. And once he's curious enough, he may need to be reassured, which is a secondary issue. And that's why we repositioned our brands, and we are vociferous, perhaps over the top, especially in the media about this, because it creates a kind of PR, it creates a kind of curiosity in the minds of our customers as to what this company is doing actually, as opposed to most companies that would make a virtue out of saying, we make everything for everyone. The problem is they don't make money, that's the whole problem. They make everything for everyone, but they don't make money. So we believe curiosity is more important than familiarity. The fourth, as Guruji teaches us in Pune, just as yoga is alignment, whether of the arm with the leg, whether of the body with the mind, or whether of the self with something else, which of course is not for people like us. In the same way, management is also a process of alignment. I mean, if it is important to explain what is management, I feel. And in one word, it is alignment. Whether you say it is alignment between functions in the same company, we all talk about bureaucracies and silos and all that kind of stuff. Whether it's between the front end of the business and the back end, or between the company and the competition, in the sense that you have to align yourself to the competition more than the customer today. As Mr. Alries says, it's not what your customer wants, it's what your competitor will allow you to make that you can do in the marketplace. So we have to align ourselves with the competition by differentiating ourselves from him. So management is alignment. This is our fourth principle. And the fifth and last one, I'm sure you're all very familiar with this. I would just say this, that the world that Archimedes is talking about moving is like a segment of the market that we want to move. How do we move the segment of the market? Archimedes says we need a long lever. In our view, the lever is like the brand. The Pulsar, the Discover, the Boxer, the RE. These are levers to move specific segments. But the lever is no use by itself unless it has a strong fulcrum on which it can stand. The strong fulcrum is the product platform the customer never sees. The customer doesn't know that the Discover and Pulsar may actually be coming from the same set of parts. That strong platform, supply chain, design, development, whatever you call it, the back end is the fulcrum. And of course, finally, and most importantly perhaps, the market segment, the brand, and the platform has to be all aligned. That is strategy. So this is our fifth principle in terms of our understanding of what we mean when we say a brand strategy. I think my second last slide, I won't keep you any longer. Our eureka moment was this. See, we are very confounded by the issue of managing companies because managing 5,000, 8,000, 9,000 people is impossible. And we could not find any HR process by which we can continuously explain to people, align people, and get everybody working the same direction. But the minute we clarified that Bajaj is not, we are not Bajaj, which is heritage, value, trust, Indian, patriotic, and all that sort of stuff that you can't work with. We are Pulsar equals sports, Discover equals deluxe, Boxer equals utility, stronger for longer is what is Boxer, so on and so forth. Once the brand was made absolutely sharp and crystal clear, then it's not really the management or the company that manages the brand. The brand manages the company. You just got to listen to the brand, observe the brand. You look at a BMW, you know what you have to do. As Mr. Bhatt was talking earlier, whether it's in terms of design, whether it's in terms of performance, whether it's in terms of pricing, it's self-evident. So it's only when brands are self-evident can managing them become a lark actually. And in that sense, you know, the companies that are healthy, in other words, they don't suffer any disease, i.e. dis-ease. When management is an easy process, is when brands manage companies rather than when companies manage brands. The last slide, forgive me if all of this sounded too simplistic. And people always, or not always, but some people sometimes ask me that, you know, can it really be quite as simple as this? And what keeps your competition from doing the same thing and quickly moving the same way? But as our own consultant Jack Trout told us, solving the problem is easy. Selling the solution is damn tough because everybody's ego is much bigger than their logo. That is the whole problem in today's corporate world. I guess that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bajaj, and we'd like to open it up again for some questions. I'd like to request Mr. Agarwal to perhaps start the Q&A for Mr. Bajaj.
Thank you, Rajiv, for making it to the conference, and we cannot have enough of your time, but still, I think it's brilliant, and I just want to ask one question. One of the biggest events which has happened this year is breaking up of Honda as an independent company. Will it change that competitive landscape, and what does it mean for the entire industry, and particularly Bajaj as well as Hero Honda?
Sir, I don't know anything about the product that Honda is going to launch. So it's very hard to comment on something when you haven't seen pictures and you don't know any specifications, etc. But from what I've heard, as I'm sure all of you have, Honda seems intent on launching a apparently 100cc motorcycle at a very, very competitive price. And from whatever little I've heard about it, apparently going after the middle of the market, which is the large 100cc market, motorcycle market, as you know. Now, of course, what they would do and what Hero would do is not for me to say, but my response would be this. from Bajaj Auto's point of view. Number one, if somebody is going to introduce a product to participate in an existing category, I try not to worry about it. Because I know that 90-95% of such products will definitely fail. And when I look at Honda's history of doing that in India for the last 7 years, with 5 motorcycle brands, as you are aware of, barring the one brand Shine, that sells 30,000 a month and can possibly do a little more if they can produce more, the others have been abject failures, selling as little as 3,000 to 5,000 a month. So very candidly, I would say, what was the reason for Honda to introduce 4 brands, i.e. the Twister or the Stunner or the Unicorn or the Dazzler, which were all in apparently the sporty segment, i.e. the Pulsar segment or Pulsar category, I would say, and why have they not been able to make an impact? I think the answer is because they were, again, trying to take a slice out of somebody else's category. And this market does not reward manufacturers who do that, because the consumer is very, very brand conscious, and if he sees some brand create a category, he bestows upon that brand leadership for that category because he believes he's the pioneer, he's the specialist, he knows it best. Of course, it is possible that somebody may do one better with better technology, but the reality of our business, motorcycle business, which we must humbly accept, is that technology has saturated a long time back. If you read the auto magazines, we look very foolish because if we make commuter bikes, we are competing on the last 1.3 kilometers per liter, mera jada hai usse. And if we make sports bike, we need 4 stopwatches to find out who is 1/3 of a second faster than whom. In other words, everybody's product is like everybody else's, which can point towards a very, very commoditized industry. I mean, today a 100cc bike from Bajaj is as good, if not better, than Hero Honda Splendor, if I may just take a name to explain my point of view. And there are at least 3 sports bikes out there that are as good as our Pulsar. The reason Splendor and Pulsar dominate their categories is because they created them. So unless Honda were creating a category, I would not want to worry about it too much. That's my kind of larger reaction. And in terms of what we will do and what we have been doing is, we have anyway been trying to move our portfolio away from the 100cc segment. Today, it is only about primarily 50,000, 60,000 Discovers that we make in that category. Otherwise, everything we sell is the bigger Discovers, the Pulsar, and the few Platinas that we sell at the lower end, we hope will be taken up by the new Boxer we've introduced, which is a 150cc motorcycle. So when we move the people to the category of our strength, I think we secure ourselves as best we can. Beyond that, we have to see what Honda specifically does and then react to it.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? Yes, sir.
Hi, nice presentation, Mr. Bajaj. Just wanted more insight about your strategies of creating brands in export markets like Africa, where the competition is from Chinese. What's your thought process and growth of these markets?
Thank you. It's a very long answer, but let me put it like this. If you read the book Marketing Warfare by Rees and Trout, they will tell you there are only 3 strategies that really work in terms of creating brands, i.e. creating categories. There's an offense strategy, a flanking, and a guerrilla strategy. That's it. There's no 4th strategy really in business. So our strategy is, one, with the brands where we are strong in India, which is basically Pulsar and Discover. Our first attempt was to take them to similar markets, for example, like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, etc., around us, and hope to achieve the same success that we did here. That has worked. We do very well in these markets. I won't give you numbers, market shares and all. I'll just assume you know them. The second was to take these brands into markets which were more competitive, similar but more competitive. For example, Colombia or the Philippines. Just to illustrate, the Philippines today, we do about 12,000 motorcycles a month, which is a very large number. And we are very close to market leadership in the motorcycle segment there. Over there, our approach is slightly different. There, our entry strategy, so to speak, I mean, again, this is a a business management buzzword. You must have an entry strategy. So our entry strategy in one word is Kawasaki. Because Kawasaki has a fabulous distribution network in all these markets. But unfortunately, Kawasaki is not so competitive. So the best thing that has happened to us in many of the ASEAN and the LATAM markets, even Mexico, is we have been able to ride on Kawasaki's network and put our products like Pulsar and Discover into that network. And that's been done quite successfully also, which is why I think this year our motorcycle exports will be over 1.2 million vehicles. The third strategy is for markets like Brazil, which are even more evolved, and almost like markets of US and Europe in their stage of evolution. I referred to evolution earlier. There, our entry strategy in one word is KTM, because we have said to ourselves very humbly that why should somebody in Brazil or the US or Europe want to buy some Pulsar or Discover or something like that? It's just not remarkable enough. It doesn't arouse any curiosity. Whereas a brand like KTM would be fantastic for that marketplace, especially if it was developed and manufactured out of here, which would obviously give it a superior cost structure. And hence, if I may use this opportunity to elaborate, although it was thought that KTM was primarily supposed to be a provider of technology to Bajaj, and that is why Bajaj looked at KTM. It's not true. I just finished saying, there's really no new technology in this business. I mean, whether you make a Harley Davidson or a Ducati or whatever, it's the same technology. It's a game of brands. So our interest in KTM was primarily not of technology. It was in KTM as a brand, and specifically as a brand that could be our entry ticket to markets like Brazil, and of course US, Europe, Japan and Australia, they're already very strongly present in. So that's the third strategy. And the fourth is the continent of Africa by and large, barring South Africa, where our primary competition is only the Chinese, because it's a very cost-conscious market, or a price-conscious market, and so the Japanese are virtually not there. And the strategy we use there is what is called the offense strategy, and put very simply, it means this: just be the opposite of the market leader. So if the market leader is small, be big. If he's cheap, be expensive. If he's fast, be slow. If he's fuel efficient, be powerful. It's as simple as that. So while the Chinese dump commoditized motorcycles at $300-400 into the marketplace, we've gone with this kind of an approach with the brand Boxer that we've just introduced into this market this month. And we've had enormous success. As undoubtedly Kevin has shared with most of you from time to time, the largest market there is Nigeria. We entered, say, about 5 years back or so, 5 or 6 years ago. And today we are market leader with about 26,000 motorcycles a month, selling at a premium of almost 50%. The typical, the number two guy, the Chinese, is about 67,000 naira. We are at about 102,000 naira now. So this again proves the point that if you approach a market with principles of evolution and adaptation and curiosity and so on and so forth, sound principles, then every market responds exactly the same way. And people everywhere appreciate a better product, and they will give you your due. For example, they have given us 29% of the Nigerian market. But if we were to get greedy and want 59%, then we would make mistakes. So this has been kind of our strategy in different export markets.
Sorry, one more question on the domestic market. If you look at the recent launches which has happened, I mean, we've seen Boxer going into, let's say, near about 150cc, and Discover also moving. The price points between Boxer, Discover, and Pulsar seems to be diluted a bit. What is your thinking behind the same, and what do you think a consumer thinks about these products when he walks into a Bajaj showroom?
Yeah, see, as I said earlier in a certain context, price is secondary. First, we must be fundamentally clear about positions. The Boxer, when we design a motorcycle, we do it basis a framework that we call are three-legged stool, in the sense that any stool to be stable needs at least three legs. One leg is that of design, which is often called styling or features. The second is performance, which can be power, comfort, mileage, etc. And the third is price. Now what happens is price is typically fixed by the marketplace. So whether it's a Pulsar category, a Discover category, or a Boxer category, the price is fixed by competition. We can only play with the other two parameters. Now what we have done, for example, when we created the Pulsar in 2001, we stepped very hard on the design leg of the stool, on that lever, to create something that was much bigger, much sexier, different, sportier, etc. And we also provided reasonable performance with that. What we have done with the Boxer is to say that if Pulsar is a bike for India, then Boxer is a bike for Bharat. And in that sense, we have not at all worked on the design lever, in the sense that, if I may say so, it's a very dumb-looking bike. It'll never win any beauty contest. But it's functionally just outstanding in terms of a big engine, a big transmission, a big chassis, big suspension, big headlamp. I mean, everything's just bigger than it needs to be. So we are creating a new category, you know. And the reason we are able to do it at that price point is fundamentally two. One, because the brand is very sharp, that it's just a utility motorcycle. I can tell you, for example, when we took it out for market research over the last 1 year, because ultimately if you have marketing people, they will always do market research, you know. So we did the market research, and every time we had a negative feedback, because it's a dumb-looking motorcycle, you know, and when a customer sits in front of you and you are asking him for his opinion, he gives you all the gyan that he himself doesn't know. So then he will tell you all that is wrong with that motorcycle. But since we were creating a new category, we were confident that we were getting it right. And the reason we kept it very sober in terms of styling and features is because we needed to achieve a certain price point, such as 42,000 rupees, which is where it is priced now, and we still needed a double-digit EBITDA. So we took it very easy on one lever. We pressed very hard on the other one. And the second reason we have been able to do it is because of our platform strategy. There is very little, except a few bits and pieces on the outside, that is really new on the Boxer. So in terms of any design effort, tooling effort, manufacturing capacity, any learning curve on quality and cost, it's very minimal both for us and our suppliers. So the result is that we have a motorcycle at 42,000 rupees with a double-digit EBITDA made for a category that doesn't exist. Since it's just been launched, I mean, I can't say that it's successful, but if the principles that we operate by are sound, it should be successful.
Yes, sir, we'll take the last question here.
We have learned a lot what you have said, but can you tell us what was your strategy?
Sorry, I can't. Yes,
strategy about the car you were going to manufacture, and have you stopped it, or you still have that in mind?
Sir, I have tried to clarify this many times, but it keeps coming back to haunt me. The answer is this, that when we first started work with Renault and Nissan in October 2007, we started on the what Mr. Gohn called as the ULC, the low-cost car. If I may say so, yes, it was something like the Nano. And at that time, I think it's fair to say that many companies were thinking like that, and so was Renault Nissan. And we went along with that. We respected their wisdom because they were a car maker. But over 2 years of engaging with them on trying to develop this product, we found that it was completely unviable. There was no way, and that brings me back really to the point again about technology having saturated. You know, there's only so much one can do to improve performance or to reduce cost in this business. So there was no way that project was ever going to be viable, which is why, to be specific, on 8th of November 2009, about 2 years after the effort started, I met Mr. Gohn in Delhi and I told him that you know, if they wanted to, they could go ahead with it. We would not proceed with this project because we don't want to go from being a 20% EBITDA company to a 2% EBITDA company. So the car business was not for us. So the project was completely reoriented to put it simplistically again, from being a car, are you from the car industry? No, okay. From being a car to being a four-wheeler. And, and what I mean by that is a product that would be evolved out of skills and cost structure of two-wheelers and three-wheelers. In other words, we have a great niche in our RE, which is the world's largest selling three-wheeler brand, as you know, probably do close to 500,000, if not more, three-wheelers this year. I guess it's no secret, it's over a 30% EBITDA, so that's a wonderful business. But there are some problems. The problem is this three-wheeler is an eyesore on the road. It is thought that it is a nuisance in terms of the environment and congestion and all, which is a debatable point, but that's the perception, so one must respect that. It's not a vehicle that inspires confidence in terms of safety and comfort. I mean, who wants his kids going to that in school? So there's all these kinds of issues. So all we did was to say to ourselves that if we have a good thing going, then it is our responsibility to take it to the next level, and it is our opportunity to do that. And hence, if we can make, and don't let this give you a vision of our four-wheeler being a three-wheeler with a fourth wheel. It is not as crude as that. But if you can, please imagine a really nice-looking four-wheeler, which is not exactly a car, but a very, very nice four-wheeler. Again, a attempt to create a new category. And so that's what we are doing, and that is why all the design and development is done internally by us, because now this is a project for a two- and three-wheeler maker, not for a car maker. Of course, the key question is, what is the difference between a car and a four-wheeler? And this question we don't answer, and that's why the question keeps coming back. And the reason we don't answer is because if we explain that, then we give our strategy away. So we leave that little bit of ambiguity there as to what is the key difference between a car and a four-wheeler. So in a sense, it's our fault. We don't answer the question completely, and then it comes back to us again. But that's where it is. We are not in the car business. We don't want to be in the car business. We explored it. We think it's not for us. It's a red ocean. It's not a blue ocean. And we'd rather stick with our RE and take it forward into a four-wheeler space.
Is there a time span on it for the four-wheeler?
Yes, we will introduce this next year out of our plant in Aurangabad. We started setting up the plant already over there.
Thank you, Mr. Bajaj. And we'd like to invite Mr. Agarwal to present you with a token of appreciation for your inputs today. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to request you to all remain seated. It's about 1 p.m. and usually time for food, but today and tomorrow you're going to be getting food for thought, because in addition to a delicious lunch which will be served at your table, there will be a panel discussion of India's top CEOs, and we'll start that in about 4 or 5 minutes after the stage is set up. So please be seated. Thank you.